Hi, this is Regina, and I thought it might be important just to share a little bit of my testimony, not in great detail, because this is still somewhat public. I share my testimony when I'm in with a group of people or individually when they've shared some things about themselves and I share some things about me, and just throughout the course of the conversation, right? Because this is not for shock value. One of the things that had always concerned me about coming to this point when I was going to be able to share my testimony and write about it and do seminars and webinars to help other people was that I did not want to sensationalize the trauma. I never wanted to do that because of what's already done. If you go to YouTube and you um, do some searches on dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality, alters, switching, fronting, you can see a lot of a lot of material out there, and some of it is not. It's not well done, and I never wanted to be that type of person. I never wanted to try to make money off of my pain. But what I have come to understand is that I can teach, talk, and write about the journey. And I like to call myself a tour guide on your mental health journey to dominate. Um, that I can be a tour guide, I can teach, talk, and write about it, and it's okay for people to pay for that because it is a valuable service, it is valuable information, and you need to invest in yourself. If you get it for free, you won't value it. You'll put it to the side. And so making that investment in yourself is what's going to help you to take the things that I'm sharing with you seriously and apply it. Now, there will be lots of things that I am willing to share for free, and I will do that. You will see that on this page and the other places. If you go to You Are Remarkable, our Facebook page and our Instagram page is u.r.remarkable. And I will make sure that I put that scrolling somewhere on the screen so you'll be able to find it. So, You Are Remarkable comes from the verse in Psalms where it says that you have been fearfully and wonderfully made. And it's actually in the Christian Standard Bible where instead of fearfully, it says remarkably. And that really stuck out to me um, because I am remarkably made. You are remarkably made. And despite the trauma and trials and setbacks and challenges that we have gone through, we are remarkable individuals. And so that's why it's called You Are Remarkable, because I always want to encourage you and strengthen you and remind you how wonderful you are because you're made in the image and the likeness of our Creator. And I know for many people dealing with dissociative identity disorder or even a very severe mental health, that faith has been a very touchy a place for people. And also because sometimes it's been within the religious structure, the church structure where abuse has happened. But you cannot define the creator of the universe by human frailties, by human tragedies, by the selfish acts of another human being or many human beings. You don't define the creator of the universe by them, right? You look at the creator of the universe and you define who you are to him and not to them. And one of the important things that I want to share this with you, and many of you may disagree with me, and I totally understand that. And you may never come back. And I get that, but I hope that you'll think about it. In Mark 7, Jesus, Yeshua, HaMashiach, Jesus of Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, he tells this parable, and, he's famous for telling lots of parables. And he is talking in this parable, and he says that it's not what you consume, it's not things on the outside that corrupt a person, that defile a person, right? Because those things come in you and they pass out in your stool. He says it's the things that come out of your heart that is what defiles a man. And I had to really talk to God about that, because, like, what does that mean? Because generally in trauma, we define ourselves, why we are overeating, bulimic, anorexic, depressed, suicidal. We define those things sometimes by outward experiences, things that have been done to us, and not that the things that have been done to us have not been horrible. But we define it by that. We didn't have this, we didn't have these things were done to me, this is what happened, this is what I survived through. But then what I began to understand is that, and this is how I came to write and to start to develop the idea that mental health that dominates, that's what we want, that it is what we think. It is what we think, and what we think is not defined by outside influences. It really is defined by what we think. And so the outside influences can cause us to have fear, anger, hatred, shame, rejection. We feel abandonment. But all those things are things that we feel, and very real. I am not trying to push aside the validity of the things that we feel, right? Those things are very much real. What I want to define and what I want to make clear for us is that it is the things that come out of our heart. It is the anger. It is the fear. It is the denial. That is what makes us sick, right? That is what, if you weren't fearful, you wouldn't have split. If you weren't angry, because the body itself, it can heal. It can heal from the abuse. I mean, some things like marks and scars and those type of things, they're going to leave a scar, but your body can heal. It's the inward man, it's your soul that has the hard time healing. It's your soul that, because of the anger, the fear, generally the fear initially, that causes you to split off into those personalities to try to protect yourself. Because in such cases, many times you still had to live with the abuser. You still had to put on this face to the public and to the community as if everything was okay. You still had to look at that person and smile, or sit at dinner with them, or see them in school, or wherever it was that you had to encounter. You still had to function. And so it was those things within us that causes all the fracturing, that causes the panic attacks. It's the perception is real. Your perception is very real to you. And I'm not here to debate with you about your perception. What I want to do, what I desire to do through the study tools and the webinars and the seminars and the books and the pamphlets and the workbooks, is to help you walk through that inner journey, that healing of the soul, because I know that it's possible, because I've done it. I am unified right now. And I know for some people with dissociative identity disorder, the idea of thinking that you would be one is terrifying to you. I'm not here to say that that's the answer to having peace, but what I do want to say is that you can have peace. And if you look at that, if you look at striving for peace, then the things that you need for peace for you are going to happen for you. And you can be healed and you can be whole. I have a hand, it has 5 fingers, but it's still a hand, right? And it still functions, and I need all of that. So whether I use my hand like a fist and they're together, or whether I have it separate because I'm grabbing things or typing, right? It's still a hand, it still functions, it still works together. So whether you try to work together like this, or whether you decide to work together like this, that is completely your choice. I'm not here to tell you how to do that, but what I do want to do is encourage you that you can have peace. You can have soundness of mind. You can have healthy relationships. You can have mental health that dominates, because that's how we were created. We were created to have that type of mental health, and it is available to you. So for those who have no idea what dissociative identity disorder is, everyone dissociates in some form or fashion. And the common example that's used to explain it is you get in the car and you're going from one destination to another. Let's say you're going from work to home. And you get in the car, you turn it on, you drive, and then all of a sudden you're home. Like you have no idea how you got home because your mind was somewhere else, but somehow you found your way home without killing anybody or killing yourself. So you dissociated, you separated, right? Another way to kind of think of dissociation is not that I supporting or against this particular person, but Beyonce always had her Sasha Fierce, right? You see different actors or different characters who have their fierce self. Look at the Hulk, right? Or look at people who have one persona, Superman, he's Clark Kent, but put him in that uniform. Excuse me, one moment, something is beeping in my house. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. I put something in the oven to like heat up the oven, and then the oven's like beeping saying it's ready. And I thought it would stop, but it didn't stop. So I go ahead and set that. So I'm back. All right. So I was talking about when we look at comic characters who have one persona, and then they put on their uniform or their suit, whatever it is, right? Their cape, and they become somebody else, but it's still the same person. That's somewhat of what happens through dissociation. But I am going to link a video somewhere around here, and I'll make sure that I put it in the description as well, which I think has a really good explanation of dissociative identity disorder, and you can watch that, and that will really help you. So in my particular case, I shared that I was sexually abused by my father. Now, at the time when my mom came here, she did not know anyone. She came from Jamaica, and she came here to do work. And she was a maid, and she did cleaning. What she didn't know at the time was that when she met my father, he had recently been released from jail for being a pedophile. Now, back in the 70s, that's saying a lot, right? There was no, registry, and you don't really think about that. And families keep secrets, don't we? We keep secrets really well. And so he had molested and impregnated one of his daughters, and he went to prison for it. And so he had gotten out. No one said anything to my mom. And so she started dating him, and they were together. And then she got pregnant and she had a girl. And nobody said anything to my mom. And she would go away to work, and she would leave me with him thinking that I was safe. And he was a mechanic, so he had his own shop, which means he could be very flexible with his hours. And so she would leave me there with him instead of with a babysitter. And yes, so lots of things happened. I think when I recount the story, and when I think back on those times, what really shocks me, and what I want to kind of prep you for, is that he shared me with his friends. And I don't know that I would call them friends. They're probably associates. And I don't know who they are, and I've not tried to track them down. That's not necessary. Both of my parents have passed away now. So he shared me with associates, and a particular associate had a propensity for extreme cruelty, but mostly it was this person was involved in a satanic ritual cult. So there was satanic ritual abuse involved in that, meaning that I witnessed abuse of other children. There were sacrifices of animals and blood and prayers and chanting. And the things that went on there were so shocking that much of what has happened, the reason that in my particular journey and case, I shattered, my personality shattered, it protected itself, right? How do you protect the core innocent person? How does my mind think of how can I protect her so that she can function? And so it's like, throwing a vase on the ground, and you have big pieces and little pieces, and sometimes you have small shattered things. And so I shattered. At some point I did tell my mom later, and she left my father. And I'm skipping through a lot because that's not the point of this video, is not to get into all the deep things. She took me to counseling, but I would always have extreme nightmares, terrible nightmares at night. And I didn't want to go to counseling anymore. And she couldn't afford to have me go to counseling and not say anything, or cry and not go, and go to counseling and not talk. And in those days, and with my mom in particular, and I mean, looking back, I wondered, how much of it was just, this is now the late 70s. The whole idea of multiple personality disorder and any type of those things was rare, as far as in the psychiatric world. So I go through life and have the oddities and weird of things, that weird of things, the weirdness, that if you were to go and talk to my classmates today, they'd be like, she was nice, but she was a little weird. But I was really smart, though. It's really smart. I wasn't the violent kid. I wasn't a bully. In fact, I was probably the very shy one, the very weird and quiet one. And so, fast forward through life, and high school was very difficult. I went to Christian schools most of the time. And so I got saved, if you will, at camp, my freshman year camp, I believe. So what am I, like 14? And I got saved. And I heard about Jesus. I accepted him as my Lord and Savior. But I don't know that much of that change. But what I can appreciate and say is that I learned to memorize scripture. So I had this, I was beginning to build up this reservoir of the word inside of me at that age. Because you went to school and you had Bible verses you had to memorize, and you had Bible quizzes and all sorts of things like that, right? And it was in my senior year of high school, I tried to commit suicide one time, and was separated from my mom for a while. My father was not in the scene. It was just me and my brother and my mom. And so I separated from her for a while, and it was difficult for her, and I was difficult. She didn't know how to help me, and I didn't know how to help myself. But I was smart, and I was high functioning. I liked to work, and I liked to do things. And so my first job, I got a job at Domino's Pizza. Loved that job. Oh, when they had the 30 minutes are free. Some of you younger people may not even remember 30 minutes are free, but they had 30 minutes are free. Loved working at Domino's, worked my way up, and just, I enjoyed work. I found something that I could excel at, because it was then I could separate from myself, because I could put on my work girl, the person that went to work and was high functioning and organized and driven, and I didn't have to, when I was at home, be quiet and deal with all the things that were swirling. And I say raging, not in the sense of anger, but as much as clashing with each other. Right. And so I found work to be my drug of choice. I never really got into being promiscuous or doing drugs or drinking or being violent, but working and excelling. That was my drug. It's still somewhat of my drug today, but I'm almost I'm almost delivered from that. Really, I'm working. God has done a wonderful thing with me on that. So got into my first marriage, and one of the interesting things I'll say about all of my exes is that they each had their own addiction. And now looking back, I wonder if I did not choose them so that I would not have to deal with myself, that it'd be easy to be lost with them, because they were their own kind of whirlwind. That, because when I'm at work, it's one thing, but if you're going to live with me, sleep with me, wake up, see me all, you're eventually going to tell that there's something going on. Right. And so now looking back in hindsight, I realized that maybe that I chose people who were so busy, so consumed with their own things, that they would never really see the different me's that would show up. Right. So married, divorced. That's when I realized I had infertility problems at that time, when we were trying to get pregnant and I couldn't. And one time I did get pregnant. We were so excited, and then I miscarried and was never able to get pregnant again. And being infertile haunted me. It'll haunt anybody. But then with all the things that happened to me, I felt like someone had done something to me, and why I couldn't have them, or maybe internally I was scared of having children. And so there was this whole extra struggle, right? Besides just the shame and the longing and the desire to be a mother. Went into the second marriage, definitely met that person in the church. And that person had an addiction as well in the church. And, through that phase of things, oh, you have demons, oh, you need to be delivered, oh, form a circle around her, let's pray for her. I mean, all of those things in a multitude of different arenas, right? And people saying they see things when they look at me. And so there was even in the church, there was sometimes no place to be safe and no place to feel that God could hear me. Like how could you let these demons stay in me? And I don't want to be this way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with me. But which me is talking at that time? Which me is present? What else is going inside internally? So fast forward, divorced from that situation, and get myself right back into another situation with someone else who has a different type of addiction. And it was, I need to pause there because it was probably between the first and second marriage when I found myself in a little bit of promiscuous behavior. And it just didn't seem like me. And so I found a counselor, and it was important to me to find someone that was a Christian. And so I found her, and she had a payment plan, but I was making decent money then. So I was able to pay for the counseling, and she did a sliding scale. And she asked me to start writing a journal. And I was like, a journal? Like, okay, fine. So I was writing in a journal, and then after a few sessions, she asked me to bring the journal in. Now, I never would open the journal and read it, or maybe I did and I didn't know, but the core me did not know. So I brought in the journal, and she went over it with me. And this was my first formal diagnosis of multiple personality disorder, because she showed me the different handwriting and the different voices. And I was floored. Like, what? Like, what do you, like, that's not me. But I couldn't deny, I knew that it was my notebook. I knew that nobody else had access to it. It was only me. She didn't just make it up. It was mine. And so then I had the task of, trying to identify them, give them names, define who they were, what their roles were in my life. And at that time, I think I had identified like 7. But as she kept talking with me, and as I kept looking at this, I was like, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going to do this. And so I stopped seeing her. I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed, but I didn't. And so, got married in the second one, married for a time, divorced, had built my own business, was getting involved in community activism, had contracts with my state. So my business was becoming very successful. I made the 40 under 40 in my state, which is huge. So if you look me up in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, you'll see Regina Roundtree, 40 under 40. I think it was Regina Ross then. It was Regina V. Ross, 40 under 40. So that was huge. No one had any idea, and neither did I. I don't even think I really thought about being dissociative anymore. Got into the third marriage. And I think that this was a time I had bought a house, my first house. And then things started to crumble. And I think this is when we had gone to counseling, marriage counseling ourselves to try to heal some things. And this is when I thought that maybe there's something wrong. And, when you get married to someone and they see you in this success and they see you doing these things, I don't know that they're prepared to see you completely fall apart and break apart and want to change who you are. And so in some aspects for my then husband at the time, he was not ready to handle the fact that I wanted to start unpeeling who I was, which would make me more dependent and not an independent woman and wife that he needed, that he thought he was getting married to. Never mind that he had his own struggles just as a man himself, right? But then you have this spouse who is beginning to reveal herself to you, because now you live with her, right? And you wake up with her. And so you're like, but this, and then this, and then this. So that ended in divorce as well. But we had separated for a while, and I thought, okay, maybe we'll make it work. And it didn't. And I had moved out of state by then, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should get some counseling. I'm in a new state, a new place. I've always lived in my same home state forever. So I decided, I found a counselor, and I remembered the things, the abuse. And I remembered that maybe there's some personality things I might really need to deal with. And so I found someone who I thought could deal with, and I did some research on study, and I was looking at EMDR. So I'm like, I think I need to dig into this, but I wanted to do it with a person of faith, and I wanted to take this seriously. And so, I'm trying to remember which happened first. Okay. First, I was looking in the Christian world to find some real counseling, right? And what happened with that is that there's an organization, I won't mention them. I haven't looked them up in a while. I don't know if they're still around, but they did really good work. And this particular person, she was a survivor of satanic ritual abuse. And that's what she taught on. She taught how to come out of it. She talked about the dissociation. I learned a lot of things from that. And I had a friend with me, and she was going to go with me to a session. This person was actually doing a workshop in the other state that I had moved to. And one of the warning things that they had said is like, if you've not really dealt with this well, make sure you don't come by yourself. Make sure that you have a plan. And because being in that space could be triggering, right? Because she was going to talk about her personalities and dissociation, how things split, how she got out. I mean, it was really getting into the abuse. And most of the time it was counselors who went to her sessions. She didn't always recommend that survivors go unless you had been many years into therapy. I thought I could handle it because I needed to know. I wanted to know more about. Here I am in my late 40s, mid 40s, and I had not mastered this yet. And we probably made it only through the first day, and I couldn't go back. Too many things were coming up. Too many things were triggering, and I was falling apart. And that's when I realized too, during that I had a lot more alters operating in me than I had thought. And so by the time I go to this Christian counselor who specializes in EMDR, and we did some therapy, it went down. When I tell you that sometimes after therapy with her, she would sit and make sure that you were unified, that you were okay. But sometimes I would go into the car and I wouldn't even drive the car because I felt like one of my alters, who's like 8 or 9, is at the wheel and they don't know how to drive. Right? And so I'm just sitting in the car in the parking lot, scared out of my mind because I don't know how to get home, because I have this 8-year-old fronting who's sitting at the wheel talking to the rest of her friends inside of me. And I was like, I can't go anywhere until I calm down, until I would pray, until I was like, I need angels here because somehow we got to get home. So there was a lot of that, and a lot of time that I was alone, that I began soaking, and I began listening to certain people. And this is where Graham Cook was a lifesaver for me. Just the way he talked about having relationship with God. I'd never heard anyone talk about having a relationship with God the way that he did. And probably still does. I'm not saying that he doesn't anymore. I don't listen to him as much anymore. And so I began that process of really soaking and praying and laying on my face. And because I worked for myself and I was in a situation where a friend, her and her husband owned real estate, and they had a small studio. They let me stay there for a year. I didn't have to pay anything except just buy my food and pay for Wi-Fi. And that was it. So I went through a lot of healing, because there could be days that I just laid on my face, laid in the presence of God, journaled, wrote, spoke, talked, and worked it through. And then the lease was coming up for an end, and I had a friend who was overseas. This is how I got to Vietnam. And I was doing work, and I had people, there were some political campaigns coming up, and they're like, we can get you a job here, we can do this, you can do that. And I just felt God saying, yeah, no, you're not going back into the busyness of high functioning again. So I said, no, I couldn't. And so I was only supposed to be in Vietnam for 5 weeks, even though you get a visa, right? And the visa lasts for 90 days. But I was only going to be there for 5 weeks, but I only bought a one-way ticket because we were going to travel around and be in different countries, and we didn't know where we were going to be when it's time for me to fly back. About 3 weeks in, I fell in love with Vietnam. There was something about that land and about the country that healed me, that spoke to me. And so eventually, after 90 days, when my visa was about to expire, I renewed it again. Well, my friend, he had already been there or been away from family for like 3.5 years. So he was going to go back, and I decided to stay, and I stayed by myself. And that's a whole nother story and journey. But point being, many things happened. Traveled around, healed, ministered in villages, and taught English, and taught the Bible, and prayed for people, and prophesied. Amazing things happened, which is stories for another time, right? But another really key person was Glory of Zion Church and Chuck Pierce, and that whole stream, that whole teaching, that really helped me a lot as well. And so through that, and then being in Vietnam and still watching online and things like that, that's what fed me when I was over there, because it's a communist country, and a lot of things about Christianity and blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that later. But that's where I learned about Sabbath and about the feasts and about the prophetic and so many amazing things that I was like, how come I didn't know this? So I learned a lot, and my relationship deepened. And so from there is where I began to understand mental health that dominates. There, I became unified. I understand what it meant to spend time and to wait on God. Maybe even for hours or days, go into prayer and not hear from him, and learn to begin to separate the voices and the personalities and come to the core of who I was. And that was a very difficult thing, because I even had to ask him, what's my favorite food and my favorite color? I don't know, because I which personality liked what. But this was Regina now. This was me. So what do I like? What is my personality like? I have no idea. So lots of learning through them. So here we are today now, 2023. Mental health that dominates. I'm writing a book about it, but I've been writing studies about it and been sharing the way that I view scriptures, what God has revealed to me, strategies, just wisdom that you only get from walking through, right? And I am blessed to have come out the other side. So that is my testimony, very condensed down. When I'm doing webinars and workshops and seminars and things, I will talk about things as it's appropriate. There's nothing that's going to be sensationalized, but I'll share as it's appropriate, and we'll talk and we'll learn, and I'll talk to you about mental health that dominates. And I'm going to be your tour guide on this mental health journey. And I'm a local, right? So I really know. I mean, you can have tour guides who've not walked the walk, who've not been through it, and they're good tour guides. They have valuable information. I am not knocking that. But look at me as your local tour guide who knows the ins and outs, who's been through it, who knows where to go, how to avoid that, how to do some other things, right? And so I look forward to sharing this journey with you, sharing the wisdom that I've learned. As I've said before, if you are a coach or a pastor or a leader of your own tribe, and you would like to partner with me and have me come in and do some teachings and training with either your staff, like if you're a pastoral staff, or you do a lot of counseling and you would love to be able to ask questions of a survivor, right? To drill and kind of ask things that you couldn't ask someone that you're counseling necessarily. We can do that. Or if you want me to come in and, speak to your parishioners or your tribe or whoever, your clients, and just kind of talk about, I have some different seminars that we can talk about which one you think might fit. I'll be glad to partner with you and to do that, because I want to add value, because there was no resource like myself that could help me. And so I'm here now, and I'm going to dominate and subdue and be fruitful and multiply and replenish, because I'm made in the image and likeness of my Creator, and so are you. So we are both very remarkable people. I look forward to meeting you and talking with you. Thank you for joining me on You Are Remarkable. I will see you soon. Shalom.